So first we're going to talk about our blast chiller. For the blast chiller, what it does is it decreases the temperature from 65 or 75 or even 85 degrees to 0 degrees, 4 degrees, or even negative 40 degrees in a very short amount of time. To be precise, it can do this. It can reduce the temperature of the goods from 80 degrees to negative 40 degrees in just 1.5 hours. This is why it's called a blast chiller. Now, if you're wondering what is the difference between a blast chiller and a normal freezer, why do we need to separate these two into a different machine? It's because for the food, we need to keep it in a safe temperature. Food is unsafe within 60 degrees to about 8 degrees. This is the temperature zone that most germs and bacteria will form. What we need to do as a resort, we need to make sure the food is very safe. This is why we need to reduce the temperature in a very short amount of time. We can use a blast chiller in different scenarios. First, of course, is to protect the goods from going bad or getting rotten or having germs and bacteria to form in them. This time, we use a plastic seal to vacuum seal the goods and then put it inside of a blast chiller to reduce the temperature. This is very good for fish products and for meat products. And as you can see, we have a big fan inside that circulates cold air within. This makes sure the center temperature of the goods will decrease very fast. Now, because it's wind cooling, this is why we need to plastic seal it, or else we will lose the water inside, the moisture inside, making our goods very dry. This is why we need to plastic seal our products, to maintain its moisture. What's the difference between a freezer freezing the goods and a blast chiller freezing the goods? Let's take meat as an example. If you have a piece of very good steak and you put it into a blast freezer, the water inside, the moisture inside of that steak will remain in its shape when you bring it in and when you take it out. Usually, when water turns into ice, it will expand in size. If we use a blast chiller, the ice and the water inside will not have a chance to expand before they turn into ice. This is what we call crystallization. This way, when you take out the meat product and you defrost it in room temperature, you will be able to keep a lot of the moisture inside. You can keep the nutritious value and the moisture inside of the meat. So when you bring it out, it's still a very good piece of steak or a very good piece of fish. Instead, if you use a chiller or a freezer, then you might have a problem where the ice already expands inside. It breaks the texture of the meat, and when you take it out and defrost it, the water will leak out. So the meat will have some leakage of water and maybe some nutritious value as well. It wouldn't taste the same. Second, blast chiller is also used very commonly in a banquet. As you know, it is very unrealistic to prepare food for 2,000 people at the same time within just 3 hours of time. It's very unrealistic to make the food within just a few hours. So what you use is typically the chef will prepare the dishes and the meals 1 or 2 weeks before the actual banquet, and they would put it inside of a blast chiller, and they would just blast freeze it to freezing temperature. They would put it inside of a freezer, and at the day of the banquet, they would use a combi oven to reheat these dishes to be served. This way, we can preserve the food's texture and taste while we can prepare ahead of time, so we're not in a rush when we finish these dishes. Blast chiller is commonly used inside of a central kitchen as well. If you're preparing individual meals or bulk meals, a lot of at the same time, then you need to pre-freeze it and ship out to multiple different locations for them to be processed again. For example, one of our clients from a local in China, they have a central kitchen in Baiyun. They serve their products and their individual box meals, almost like individual small meals for working people. They would just make a bunch of meals, individual meals, and they would put it inside of a blast chiller to freeze, and then they would ship it out to local stores for them to resell to their customers. This is why we need to use a blast chiller to do this. Third, commonly used for blast chiller is to prepare sauce. A lot of the times, the sauce needs to be created 1 day ahead of time because there's many different kinds of sauce. It is very unrealistic for the chefs to prepare all the sauce for different meals at the same night. This will be very inefficient for the chef. So what they would do is they would prepare the sauce 1 day before the actual serving day, and then they would put it inside of a blast chiller to reduce the temperature and put it inside of a freezer. And at the day when they need to serve, they would simply bring out the sauce and reheat it to be served. But one thing to keep in mind is after you use the sauce, after it's been heated up, you cannot refreeze it again. It has to be thrown out at the day when you use it. This is because when you heat up something, you're exposing it inside to the air, and also the sauce itself will be exposed to an unsafe temperature. So germs and bacteria will be able to generate inside the sauce already. So after you bring it out, don't freeze it back again. This goes to all the products that's been taken out from the freezer to defrost. Once you defrost a product, you cannot bring it back to the freezer again. You cannot bring it back to the cooler or the freezer again.